The bitter chill of Montana in winter is unlike any other. It cuts through the air with a ferocity that feels almost unnatural, like the land itself is holding its breath. The snow falls steadily, blanketing everything in a quiet, suffocating silence. Even the wind seems to have frozen, leaving only the crunch of boots and the creak of trees swaying under the weight of the snow. Thatcher Rowe, a seasoned rancher and war veteran, had grown accustomed to this desolation. The isolation of the frontier had shaped him, hardened him. His days were filled with work, tending to the cattle, maintaining his ranch, and weathering the storms, both literal and metaphorical, that came with life in the Montana wilderness. He had lost a great deal in his life: family, friends, and even parts of himself. Yet he had learned to survive. Survival, however, was not something you did in isolation. It was a fight, a constant battle against nature and sometimes against the darker parts of your own soul. Today, however, Thatcher was not preparing for the usual daily grind. He was on a different kind of mission, a search for a missing colt that had slipped the fence and wandered off during the early morning hours. It seemed like a simple task, nothing more than a mild inconvenience. But what awaited him would change his life forever. His horse, a sturdy gelding, moved cautiously through the thickening snow. The path ahead was barely visible, the snow swirling around them in thick gusts of wind. Thatcher's coat was stiff with frost, his beard dusted with ice. The cold nipped at his exposed skin, but it was a feeling he was used to. The physical discomfort didn't bother him. It was the silence, the unnerving, heavy silence that seemed to press in around him. As he rode through the snow-covered forest, his mind was preoccupied with the missing colt. But then something caught his attention, a mark in the snow. At first he thought it was just another animal trail, but as he drew closer, he realized it was something far more unsettling. The mark wasn't animal at all, it was human. His heart raced. Someone was out there, someone who needed help. He followed the trail, each step leading him deeper into the wilderness. The bloodstains, faint but unmistakable, told him all he needed to know. Someone had been left behind, and they were in dire need of help. He didn't know who this person was or how they had come to be in such a state, but he knew one thing. He couldn't leave them to die out here. He had to find them. And so Thatcher pressed on, determined to offer help to whoever had been abandoned in this freezing wilderness. A mark in the snow. Thatcher's boots sank deeper into the snow with each step. The wind had stilled, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by the crunch of his footsteps. The trail in front of him was clear now, distinct and unmistakable. The marks were long, jagged, as if the person who left them had been dragging themselves through the snow. Unable to stand, the bloodstains were the worst part. They smeared against the white landscape, stark and bright. Each smear seemed to tell a story, one of pain, of struggle, of a person who had fought to survive but had been abandoned to die alone in the snow. Thatcher's chest tightened with each step he took. Who could have left a person out here like this? And why? His mind raced, but his focus remained steady. He needed to find this person to make sure they weren't alone anymore. He had seen death before, but this felt different. This wasn't a quick death. It was slow, drawn out, and filled with suffering. The person who had left these marks had been crawling, fighting with everything they had to survive, but they were fading fast. Thatcher's eyes scanned the trees ahead, looking for any sign of movement. He knew the land better than most, but he had never seen anything like this before. There was a tension in the air now, something heavy, something that told him he was getting close. The snow around him was eerily quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to discover what lay ahead. And then he saw her, a woman, her body frail and broken, crawling slowly through the snow. Her head was low, her hair tangled with blood and snow. She wore tattered, torn skirts, the fabric frozen to her legs. One boot was missing and the other was soaked through with blood and melted snow. Her movements were slow, dragging herself forward as though the weight of her own body was too much for her to carry. Thatcher's heart skipped a beat. He could see the desperation in her, the faint flickers of life that still clung to her. But they were slipping away. His gut twisted in empathy, and he moved quickly, dropping to his knees beside her. He reached out and touched her shoulder gently, but she flinched, her eyes wide with fear. She had been abandoned, left to die alone in the snow, and yet she still fought. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but it pierced Thatcher's heart. "They called me lame," she rasped, "and left me for dead." Thatcher's breath caught in his chest. No one deserved to be treated this way. He had seen war, but this cruelty was something different. This woman had been abandoned, left to die by the very people who should have protected her. He couldn't let that be her fate. He wouldn't. He wrapped his coat around her, his arms strong and steady, as he lifted her into his arms. "Not today," he said softly, his voice firm with purpose. "You're not dying out here. I won't let you." Thatcher mounted his horse, gently placing the woman in his arms, his heart pounding in his chest. She was cold, too cold, but she was still breathing. He wouldn't stop until he had her to safety, until he knew she was safe. The encounter. The storm was growing fiercer as Thatcher rode through the snow, the wind howling around them. His horse, Rain, moved steadily forward, plowing through the deep snow. But even in the midst of the storm, Thatcher's focus was unwavering. The woman in his arms was weak, her breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. Her body felt fragile, too light in his arms, as though it could break at any moment. But her fight, her desire to live, was still there. He could feel it, even if it was barely a flicker now. Her head rested against his chest, her body trembling from the cold, but her pulse was strong. She wasn't giving up, and neither was he. He had no idea who she was or why she was in this condition, but he wasn't about to let her die alone in the snow. "Just hold on," he whispered, more to reassure himself than her. He could feel her body shivering against him, the cold seeping into his own bones. The wind howled in his ears, but he pushed it aside, focusing solely on the woman in his arms. Every inch of progress was hard-fought. Every mile felt like a victory. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, Thatcher's thoughts drifted to the ranch and the life he had built. He had known isolation, but this was different. This woman had been left to die, and now he was the one to offer her a chance at life. A second chance if she could hold on. The coyotes were out, their eerie howls cutting through the storm. Thatcher's grip on the reins tightened, and his other arm held the woman steady against him. "You just hold on," he murmured. "I won't let them get you." The storm was fierce, but his determination was fiercer, struggling against the odds. The snowstorm raged around them, its fury unrelenting, but Thatcher Rowe's determination was stronger than the elements. His horse, Rain, plodded steadily through the snow, though the path ahead had nearly disappeared under the thick blanket of white. The cold, biting wind cut at Thatcher's face, stinging his skin, but he barely noticed. His focus was solely on the woman he cradled in his arms, her fragile body shivering with every breath. Her head rested on his chest, her breath shallow and uneven, each exhale a struggle. Her body was cold, far too cold, and Thatcher knew the urgency of the situation. He could feel the weight of her life in his arms, but he wasn't about to let it slip away. Not while he had the strength to fight for her. The journey back to his ranch felt longer with each passing moment. His horse's hooves barely made a sound as they pushed through the deep snow, the world around them swallowed in the thick storm. Every now and then, Thatcher's ears would prick at the sound of coyotes in the distance, their mournful howls creeping into the silence like ghosts. They were drawn by the scent of weakness, just as much a danger as the storm itself. But Thatcher's grip on the reins tightened, his resolve unyielding. "You hold on, Amelia," he murmured, though he wasn't sure if she could hear him. Her name, still unfamiliar on his lips, felt heavy with both sorrow and hope. She hadn't spoken since he found her, her only communication a broken whisper, but Thatcher could feel the spark of life in her, that flicker of survival that refused to be extinguished. The wind howled louder, the snow falling in thick sheets, yet Thatcher never faltered. He spoke softly to her, telling her stories of his ranch, of the land that stretched endlessly before them. He spoke of his cows and horses, of the quiet peace that came with working the land. He spoke to her as though she were a friend, someone he had known for years. It was a way to anchor both of them in this moment, a way to hold on to something familiar. "Just a little further," he whispered, his voice low and steady, though the cold had begun to seep into his bones as well. His legs were numb, his hands stiff from the cold, but he knew he couldn't afford to stop. The storm was worsening, and he needed to get her inside, away from the biting cold, where she could finally rest. The sound of the storm was deafening now, a low, constant roar as the wind picked up again, pushing the snow sideways. But Thatcher's focus remained steady. He could see the outline of his cabin in the distance, a dark shape against the white wilderness. Home, safety. He urged Rain forward, his heart pounding as they neared the warmth of the fire waiting inside. It took everything in him to stay focused. The exhaustion in his limbs, the cold that was beginning to numb his hands and feet. It all had to wait. He had to get her to safety. It was the only thing that mattered. As they reached the porch of his cabin, Thatcher dismounted, his legs stiff as he lifted the woman into his arms once more. She was so light, too light, and the breath in her chest was weak, but still there he carried her inside, the warmth of the cabin hitting him like a wave. Her life, her survival, had come this far because of him, and he wasn't going to let it end here. A brief respite. The warmth of the cabin hit Thatcher like a physical force. The air inside was thick with the scent of pine and the faint smell of burning wood. He stepped over the threshold and gently laid Amelia down on the cot near the hearth. The fire was low, but its flickering glow was enough to chase away the chill from the storm outside. Thatcher's body ached from the cold, but he paid it no mind as he began to remove Amelia's clothes, revealing the extent of the damage the harsh elements had inflicted upon her. Her body was thin, frail, and covered in bruises and frostbite. The deep, raw wound on her leg was the worst of it. It had torn through her skin, leaving a jagged, angry gash that had been covered in ice and blood. Thatcher worked quickly but carefully, his hands steady as he cut away the frozen cloth and cleaned the wound. He had done this many times before on the battlefield, on men who had fought beside him. But this was different. This was a woman, a soul in desperate need of help. His mind flashed back to the war, the explosions, the screams, the blood. But this moment was quieter. The world outside was still, save for the storm, and inside, the only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the soft rhythm of Amelia's breathing. Thatcher had seen death, had caused death, but this was life. This was survival, and he would fight for it with everything he had. He worked with practiced hands, cleaning the wound and applying a salve made from herbs and pine resin. It smelled strong, pungent, but it was necessary. He wrapped the leg tightly with clean cloth, securing it as best as he could. Amelia whimpered faintly, but she didn't wake. She was too far gone, too weak. Thatcher sat beside her, watching her carefully as she rested. The storm outside raged on, but inside, There was a strange peace. He leaned back against the wall, his muscles sore and stiff, and closed his eyes for a moment. He could feel the weight of the day pressing down on him, but there was no time to rest. Not yet. His mind wandered back to the war, to the battles he had fought, the lives he had saved and lost. He had been a soldier. He had taken lives in the name of duty. But here, now he was a man trying to save a woman's life. He wasn't sure why she had been left to die, but he couldn't allow it, not on his watch. He reached for the kettle beside the fire and poured some warm broth into a mug. He would let her rest, but he couldn't leave her alone for too long. She needed him, and in some strange way, he needed her too. Secrets unraveled. When Amelia finally woke, the first thing she saw was the soft glow of the fire, the warmth wrapping around her like a blanket. Her mind was foggy, her senses dulled from the fever that had taken hold of her. But when her eyes flickered open and met Thatcher's, something changed. The confusion, the fear, all seemed to dissipate in that instant. There was safety here. Her throat was dry, her voice hoarse when she spoke. "Where am I?" she whispered, her eyes darting around the cabin, looking for something familiar. "You're at my ranch," Thatcher said, his voice low and steady. "You were caught in the storm. I found you and brought you here." Amelia's brow furrowed and she looked around, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't remember. How did I get here?" Thatcher didn't respond immediately. He knew the weight of the question. He didn't know her story. He didn't know why she had been left to die in the snow. But he also knew that her past wasn't something she wanted to relive. Instead, he offered her a small smile. "You're safe now," he said simply, his voice warm and reassuring. Amelia's eyes welled up with tears and she tried to sit up, but gasped in pain. Thatcher immediately moved to steady her, gently helping her lie back down. He could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of being alone, of being abandoned again. "I wasn't alone," she murmured softly, more to herself than to him. "But they left me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Thatcher had seen the scars of war, but this was something different. This woman, this broken soul, had been discarded, left behind by those who were supposed to care for her. He sat beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone now," he said softly. "Not while I'm here." She didn't respond, but her eyes softened, and Thatcher could feel the weight of her fears start to lift. For the first time since he had found her, she seemed at peace. For the first time, she wasn't fighting. She was safe. The threat returns. It was only a matter of time before the past came knocking. No matter how far you ran or how much you tried to bury it, the past had a way of catching up with you. Thatcher knew this as well as anyone. But even though he had been preparing for the harsh realities of frontier life, he wasn't prepared for what came next. A few days had passed since he had brought Amelia back to the ranch. She was healing, slowly but surely. The fire inside her seemed to burn brighter with each passing hour. There was something about the land, the isolation, the safety of Thatcher's quiet world that gave her a sense of peace. Yet, even as she began to heal, Thatcher could sense the tension that lingered beneath the surface. One evening, as the wind howled outside and the fire crackled softly in the hearth, Thatcher sat on the porch, watching the horizon. His thoughts were with Amelia, how she had begun to regain strength, how her quiet smile had returned. He was starting to believe she might just make it through. But then, as if summoned by the universe's cruel sense of irony, a rider appeared on the horizon. At first, Thatcher thought it was just another traveler, someone passing through the wilderness. But as the figure drew closer, he could tell there was something different about this man. The rider moved with purpose, his posture rigid and confident. Thatcher's heart sank. The man was dressed in fine wool, His boots polished, his hat too pristine for this rough land. He didn't look like a rancher or any man who belonged in the unforgiving wilderness. The man slowed as he reached the ranch, his eyes locking onto Thatcher's from across the porch. Thatcher stood, his hand instinctively moving to the rifle resting by the door. He wasn't sure who this man was, but he didn't trust him. "Afternoon," the man called, his voice smooth and polished. He dismounted with grace, the briefcase tucked neatly under his arm. "Name's Garrett Duval. I believe you have someone of mine inside." The words hit Thatcher like a punch to the gut. Garrett Duval, Amelia's husband. The name sent a cold shiver down Thatcher's spine. The tension that had been building inside him finally broke. He stepped forward, his jaw tight, his voice calm but carrying an edge of authority. "Amelia Boone," Garrett continued, ignoring the look of disbelief on Thatcher's face. "Formerly Duval. She's my wife by law, and I'm here to take her back." Thatcher's heart pounded and his fingers tightened around the rifle. He could feel his blood start to boil, the fury rising in his chest. Like wildfire, he had seen men like Garrett before, men who thought they could take whatever they wanted because the law was on their side. But Thatcher wasn't about to let him take Amelia. Not after everything she had been through, not after the fragile trust they had started to build. "That's not going to happen," Thatcher said, his voice low but firm. "She's not your wife anymore." Garrett raised an eyebrow, his smile never faltering. "The law's funny about things like this," he said, reaching into his coat and pulling out a folded piece of parchment. "You can check its authenticity if you like, but I'll be back with a lawyer in 3 days." Thatcher's jaw clenched. This wasn't just about the law. It was about a man's cruelty, a woman's pain, and a fight for something that was more valuable than any piece of paper. Thatcher wasn't going to back down. "You'll need more than a court order," Thatcher muttered under his breath. "I'm not letting her go." The battle for Amelia. The tension in the air was so thick you could almost feel it. As Garrett mounted his horse and prepared to leave, Thatcher knew the confrontation wasn't over. The storm had barely started. There was a look in Garrett's eyes, something cold and calculating. Thatcher had seen men like him before, men who used the law and their status as tools to control others. But Thatcher was different. He wasn't just some rancher. He had fought battles before, both on the battlefield and in the wilds of Montana. He wasn't going to let Garrett take Amelia back. Not when she had already started to heal. Not when she had already found some semblance of peace a few hours past after Garrett's departure. But Thatcher knew that the man wouldn't give up so easily. His instincts told him that Garrett would be back, and when he did, things would escalate. Thatcher wasn't wrong. That night, around midnight, the horses screamed. Thatcher was out the door in an instant, boots crunching in the snow as he raced toward the barn. A shadow darted past the barn, too fast for a simple animal. Thatcher's heart raced. He could see the silhouette of Garrett crouching low, a torch in his hand, ready to set fire to the hay. Thatcher's blood boiled. He wasn't going to let this man destroy everything he had worked for. The ranch, the land, Amelia's chance at a new life. None of it was going to be taken from him. Thatcher raised his rifle, aiming carefully through the blinding snow. He fired a warning shot into the air. Garrett froze, turned, and saw Thatcher charging toward him. It was then that everything came to a head. Garrett had no intention of leaving quietly. His arrogance and sense of entitlement burned hot, and he was willing to destroy everything to get what he wanted. The two men collided in the snow, fists flying. Garrett swung wildly, but Thatcher was faster, stronger. The anger inside Thatcher burned like a wildfire. Every punch he threw was fueled by the injustice that had been done to Amelia. The fight was quick, brutal. Garrett's fancy clothes did little to protect him from Thatcher's wrath. With one last punch, Thatcher sent Garrett crashing into the snow. He stood over him, chest heaving, his breath coming in sharp bursts. Garrett gasped, coughing into the cold air. Thatcher's voice was low, filled with a quiet fury. "You don't get to call her yours anymore," Thatcher growled. Garrett didn't respond. He was beaten, humiliated. Thatcher wasn't done yet. He knew the man would never stop, never let go. But for now, he had won. Garrett wouldn't be coming back. Love rekindled. The aftermath of the confrontation left the air thick with tension, but it also brought an unexpected sense of relief. Garrett was gone, his threats no longer hanging over them. But for Amelia, the damage was far from healed. Thatcher could see it in her eyes, the fear, the uncertainty, the trauma she had endured. Even now, with Garrett gone, the past still lingered like a shadow over her. She spent days recovering, both physically and emotionally. The fire in the hearth was always warm, but the warmth she needed most was something that Thatcher knew would take time. It wasn't just about nursing her wounds. It was about helping her rebuild the strength she had lost, helping her find the courage to trust again. Thatcher didn't rush her. He let her take things at her own pace. He knew that the scars on her soul would take longer to heal than the ones on her body, but every day there was progress. Every day she grew stronger. He spent more time with her, talking to her, listening to her. Her voice, though still quiet, began to carry more strength as she opened up. She told him about her past, about the love she had lost, about the pain she had carried for so long. She spoke of the life she had tried to rebuild before it was ripped away by betrayal. But as the days passed, something changed between them. There was an unspoken bond now, one forged in the fires of survival and shared hardship. Thatcher's care, his steady presence, had become a lifeline for Amelia. He wasn't just a man who had saved her life. He was someone she could trust, someone she could lean on. New beginning spring began to thaw the land, and with it, so did Amelia's heart. The woman who had been left for dead in the snow was no longer a broken soul. She was beginning to rediscover who she was, and in doing so, she was beginning to find herself again. Thatcher was by her side every step of the way, his love and support helping her rebuild her life. Together they forged something new from the ashes of the past, something fragile but real. The ranch, once a place of solitude and quiet grief, was now filled with the sounds of laughter and life. The fields outside were beginning to come alive again, the first signs of spring creeping through the thawing earth. For the first time in a long time, Amelia stood tall. She had made it through the storm, and she was no longer afraid of what the future held. As they stood together at the edge of the field, Thatcher turned to her, his eyes soft yet filled with determination. "Just promise to keep standing," he said, his voice steady, "and let me stand beside you." Amelia, her hand in his, looked out at the land they had built together. She had been broken, but now she was whole. "I promise," she whispered, her voice full of hope and warmth. For the first time in years, they stood not just as survivors, but as a family, ready to face whatever came next.